Hi, welcome back to the podcast. How do you know if it's time to set a boundary or not? And when is it time? Honestly, I think that in a lot of scenarios, there isn't necessarily a right thing to do. I would really love there to be a right thing to do because there's a lot of scenarios where I feel like I need that. But sometimes it's a matter of self-discovery and seeing what is actually going to be right for you in this moment. The number one thing that I often think about when I think about making a big decision, setting boundaries, pushing myself out of my comfort zone is it going to be helpful for me in the long run? 5 years from now, am I going to be able to look back on that scenario and say, yep, that was good for me? Because ultimately, in a lot of cases, you don't have to be, and I want to be careful when saying this, right? Because you should be your first priority, but you also don't have to be the only priority. I get it. Sometimes we are making decisions and we recognize like it can in fact affect other people too, right? So sometimes you have to sacrifice, but you also have to see, is it going to be harmful? Is it going to be bad for you? Because in a lot of scenarios, your first thing that you should be looking at is what is going to be beneficial for me in the long run in terms of growth. Is something here going to help me grow? Is something here going to teach me to be a better person? Is something here going to help me become a better person? I think that is one of the biggest things in learning how to set boundaries, because if something is not helping you become a better person, or if something is hurting you, that's when it's time to say no. That's when it's time to step away. If something is going to ultimately be good for you and your own growth in the long run, yeah, challenge yourself. I had this time period in my life where I told myself that I had to do something new every day. I had to go out of my comfort zone every day. And it was very difficult, but probably one of the best decisions I made, because I learned that all of a sudden, like, it doesn't matter. All of a sudden, if I did something wrong, like, my expectation was to fail. So if I failed, then in a way I wasn't actually failing, that was succeeding. Right? And so suddenly I just didn't care anymore, I guess. And it made me a lot more, outgoing. It helped me step out of my comfort zone a lot. And it, I think, kind of helped shape me into the person that I am today. Obviously, I still have stuff to work on, we all do. But I do think that I am a different person today in terms of my self-esteem, my confidence than I used to be. And I do attribute part of that to making this decision to step out of my comfort zone all the time. So if something is going to help you in the long run, if something, if you're going to look back in life and regret not making that decision, make that decision, say yes. If you're going to regret back in life saying yes to it, say no. But sometimes it's not that easy. So that's when we have to look at ourselves and realize what actually is best for me in this moment. And that can also be difficult too, because we have bias. We have our own interests, which isn't wanting to do what's best for you in the long run also your own interest? I feel like, yeah. But there can be interests in terms of maybe ego versus in terms of self-esteem versus what's actually going to be good for you. I think about my life this year versus other years. Maybe I talked about this in the last episode, I cannot remember, but I am definitely the first few years of college was in this era of self-discovery. I had gone through a lot in high school. I was rediscovering myself, healing from a lot of different things going on, medical and emotionally and socially, all of the above. And there was just a lot of self-discovery there. There was a lot of stuff that I needed to understand who I was first and really be able to become confident in my own the way that I approach life. Like, who am I? How do I view life? What are my views on things? What do I believe? What's important to me? What's not important to me? What do I want to stay away from? Etc., etc., etc. All of these different things. And for me, that meant having a big self-care routine. So when my friends asked me to go out at 10 p.m. at night, my answer was always no, because yes, I am a grandma and I like to stay in bed and I like to snuggle with the cat and watch a show instead of being out at 10 p.m. That is who I am. I don't think that's ever really going to change. I've always been that way. But I didn't really push myself out of my comfort zone at that moment because I knew it wasn't going to be good for me. I knew I wasn't ready for that. I knew that I needed to be able to discover myself first and keep myself in a safe and healthy space before I could be like immersing myself in more scenarios that were outside of my comfort zone, right? And now, as I have come back from Australia, I really think about things like before and after Australia, because Australia was this amazing experience, right? There was a bunch of new things. It was like an adventure and exploring, but it also was, I believe, a very big time of self-discovery in terms of being 10,000 miles away from everything I had ever known allowed me to mentally be away from it as well, if that makes sense. Like, I think I needed that barrier for a short period of time to be able to realize, like, what is my life without this? What is my life without this ideal? What is my life without these things? What is my life without all of this stuff? I think that was the final thing that I needed in order to feel comfortable to continue to push myself out of my comfort zone, because I think that I really, like, I don't know, I think I held on to a lot of things still. And I think it was time for me to realize, like, I can survive without that mindset, without that thing, without all of these different things. And so when I came back, all of a sudden, like, I was much more social. Like, I don't want to say I was a much more social person, because I always have been pretty social, but I'm willing to now bring myself in scenarios that maybe I'm not always used to. I'm not a party person, but, like, you know, it's my senior year, and I do think that if I don't do at least a little bit out of my comfort zone, I will regret it. And I don't regret not doing that before. I think I wasn't ready for it, but I do think that this is kind of a new, I don't want to say a new era, but, like, it's kind of this, you know, area of my life here where I'm kind of starting to discover things again. And then I'm going to graduate, which is crazy. And then I'm going to be going on to grad school, which is also crazy. And there's just going to be so many new things. And I think it's time for me to start slowly getting myself into that mindset of, like, there are new things happening now, and I'm exploring now, and I'm in this exploration phase rather than this comfort settle down phase again. And so now, if, you know, you ask me, hey, do you want to go to a party at 10 p.m.? I actually consider it. And sometimes I say yes, because I think that, yeah, before, I needed to say no. I needed to set that boundary because I wasn't ready for that. I needed to be able to understand myself first. Versus now, when I feel like I have a better understanding of myself and who I am, I'm able to kind of reach out and do things a little bit more, maybe explore a little bit more. And that is something that is really exciting to me. And I'm really glad to see this new era, but also, like, figure out what I still do value and what maybe I'm continuing to learn isn't as important to me. What maybe needs to change. There's going to be a lot of changes coming up in my life in the next many, many years. And it's also crazy too, because I'm in a period of my life now too, where I'm not thinking completely about what's happening just in the next week or just in the next semester, but I'm thinking all the way up to 2 to 3 years from now, right now. It's crazy because I've never really had to do that in my lifetime before. But now I'm making these real life adult decisions, and that's scary. And I don't think that counts as, I am just a child. Please let me be a child. But all of that to be said, I think that even in the mundane moments in your life, you can see how that ebb and flow in what your comfort level is and what your comfort level is to be uncomfortable too. Like, you want to be uncomfortable, but only to a certain extent where you're not going to hurt yourself with something or harm others with something, right? And I think that it's important to be able to, I think, number one, honestly, the answer to almost so many of these questions we talk about is you need to look to yourself first. You need to understand who you are first. You need to know your own well-being, your own limits, all of these different things first before you can make other decisions. And it's the same thing here. But then there's also the question of, what about bigger boundaries? Maybe letting something go. Like, that's also really scary. And I think it does come down to the same thing. What is harming you and what is going to help you? I think it's terrifying, but I would say I think that there are no bridges that I've ever burned that I regret burning, and making that decision to do that has always been so incredibly hard. And even after the decision, it's so painful. But in those moments, I look back and I think, where would I be if I hadn't made that choice for myself. And I'm happy with where I am, right? And I think that that's important to like understand that life is not permanent. Life does not stay. I wrote something recently on my newsletter, which subscribe to the newsletter if you're not. But I wrote something recently there talking about how just as the seasons change, just as we're getting into autumn right now, if you're in certain parts of the world, just as the seasons change, so do our lives, right? I mean, honestly, is it true that there's nothing that's constant in life except for the way that the world works? Except for the fact that every year autumn comes around, every year winter comes around, every year summer, spring, all of them, they come around. Every year it comes around. And I think that it's important to realize that in our own lives too, because just as the seasons change, we change. And maybe that's with the seasons, maybe that's completely without the seasons. Maybe our lives are changing faster, maybe our lives are changing slower, whatever era you're in. But I think that we don't expect the summer to stay forever, right? We don't expect autumn to stay forever. We also don't expect winter to stay forever, thank God. And it's the same thing in our lives. Whatever era I'm in right now, I don't expect it to stay forever. And if I did expect it to stay forever, I think that's where we end up getting hurt. Because if we hold on to something that is meant to change, that is meant to be in the past, then think about it. Like if the world held on to summer when it was time to change to autumn, that's what global warming is, right? Like we're suffering here. It's not good. And it's the same thing for you. Don't hold on to something that's not meant to you. So when life comes around and it's time to maybe set boundaries, let yourself set those boundaries. Let yourself burn those bridges in a respectful way, but let yourself change. And your change will continuously happen. You might change in a way that later you look back at and go, ooh, that wasn't great, right? That happens. But you are meant to change just as the seasons change. You are not meant to stay the same person. You're not the person you were when you were 4 years old, are you? You have changed. So why do we stop ourselves from allowing ourselves to change? Where did we get this idea that suddenly we don't change anymore? Because we always will. Let yourself change and let yourself set the boundaries. I'll see you next week.